I think it makes sense that colonies are disabled as they're only playing with base prosperity. Oh no, wait, they're playing with prosperity. Why are colonies disabled? I don't know. They're playing with prosperity, but not with colonies. I don't know.
Yeah, these are newer. This is the provisional P League, so they haven't played a lot of games. So it may be that they've learned the cards, but they haven't played enough games with Platinum and Colony and didn't want to introduce that in the league match. And this is game 2 of the match between JMC and Heyitstowler. I'm here with Jay Nails.
Howdy.
We've got King's Court again, we've got Mountebank again, and everything else is changed.
So King's Court looks a whole lot worse to me this time because the rest of the kingdom is just so bad. I think you're just looking to play like very, very basic money here. Maybe with some mountebanks and like a horde. That's what I would be inclined towards. What about you?
Yeah, maybe you want some warehouses to sift a little bit.
Yeah, warehouse would be a fine card to have here.
And you can even look to get some gardens later on as alternate points because the decks will be fairly big.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if gardens get gotten. You're not really going to get thin, or you're definitely not going to get thin. There's no way to trash anything except your opponent's treasures with Bandit. And so gardens will be worth a lot. Plus, if you're getting Horde, I'm not totally sure, but I feel like Horde's worth getting here. Then you're looking often to buy green cards, even if you fail to hit 8, just to get the golds into your deck. So something like 2 mountebanks early, maybe get a third one eventually, and then pivot to like Hordes, and then start buying green cards. Probably Gardens over Duchy if you have the choice between those two. Is like the idea.
Yeah, Towler opens Silver Warehouse. JMC opens Silver. I see merits to both.
Yeah, both of those seem totally fine to me. I think I marginally prefer Silver Warehouse, but I mean, it's close. I think both of them are totally fine.
Silver is more likely to hit 5 twice. Silver Warehouse is more likely to hit it once. It's less likely to miss entirely.
Yeah,
I think
it also benefit to Warehouse is it escalates or it gets you through your deck a little faster. So whatever 5 you do buy, you come around to finding a bit sooner.
Especially a 5 like Mountebank, which sort of the value increases the faster you play it. You're getting the curses and coppers into your opponent's shuffle sooner and really annoying them.
Exactly.
And even though Towler got a lucky 5 on turn 3 with 5 coppers, I think they can certainly add a second Mountebank here.
Royal Seal I'm not a big fan of. Here, I think I would take, I'm not sure, second Mountebank or a Horde. Certainly if they'd taken their second Mountebank on the previous turn when they could have, this would be a Horde for me now. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. They had 6 money and they bought a silver. Explain that.
They didn't want to have Terminal Collision, but their deck is big, and it's not going to be getting any smaller. So,
Well, so let's just ignore the entire kingdom. If you have 6 money and you're buying a treasure card, and this is going to be a point if it's coming from me. You could buy gold there, I'm not saying you should buy gold. Like, you still shouldn't buy gold. But like, if you were going to buy silver, at a minimum, you should recognize that gold is just like strictly a better card for your deck than silver is, and buy that instead. Like, the correct buy would be like Mountebank or Horde or whatever. But like, even if you were like confused with the strength of those cards, you could notice that like gold is just silver but better.
I think you discard 1 copper here.
Wow, this is looking remarkably ancient all of a sudden. The King's Court of the Cellar for a village effect, and now they're playing the council room. This is like an unreasonably lucky looking draw.
Yeah, this is honestly a rare board where I might skip King's Court entirely.
Oh yeah, I would be skipping King's Court here.
On turn 4 when they had 7, either getting a Mountebank or a Horde. which are the cards, Mountebank hurts your opponent, gives you some money. Horde lets you buy green cards and get golds. Then you get some warehouses to try to sift through the curses and the coppers. And, try to play a Mountebank, 2 out of every 3 turns if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think skipping King's Court is that rare. Like, it takes a good kingdom and just, like, escalates it up to 11. But occasionally you just have a kingdom that's, like, so bad in the first place that dropping a King's Court into it isn't going to change it that much, just because there were no actions worth playing once, and so there's still no actions worth playing thrice.
Also, this mix of expansions has got a lot fewer actions. If you add in, especially like the newer expansions, Menagerie or something, you're really going to want King's Courts. If this gold had been a Horde, they could buy a province and gain the gold here.
Yeah.
And top deck the gold, right? With the Royal Seal.
That would be nice.
Yes, I wonder if they're avoiding Mountebanks because of Gardens. I mean, they both avoided Mountebank pretty much last game as well. But to me, Mountebank is such a, your opponent may get an extra point or 2 for their Gardens, but they're never going to be able to buy provinces if you play so many Mountebanks on them that they're getting extra points in their Gardens.
Yeah. I was thinking top deck Mountebank on the previous turn. They top decked a Bandit instead. I think that's still pretty fun. Bandit's an alright kingdom. Bandit's an alright card in a kingdom like this, where it's pretty weak and money-ish.
Yeah, with the Horde coming in, I think they can even think about going something like Province Duchy. Maybe Province, double Warehouse.
Triple Garden Cellar.
Yeah, that doesn't seem crazy either. They didn't play the Horde at all.
I mean, if they knew what they wanted, maybe they just didn't need to. But like they passed up on a free cellar.
Yeah, I think I would have taken a free cellar.
Probably worth it here. Oftentimes, I'd say like a majority of the time, a big majority of the time, the correct number of cellars in your deck is like 1 or 0. But these kingdoms are so bad that having multiple cellars seems pretty all right.
And I think we're both okay with provincing fairly early in this kingdom. So this is weird. Normally when we're commentating on league matches, not specifically in P, but in different league matches, we are commenting the players are not doing enough engine-y stuff, right? They're doing a mixture of actions and golds, and we really want them to be doing hard actions. And here, I guess, logically speaking, they are kind of doing the mixed thing. They're getting some treasures and some actions, and we want them to be going more treasure focused here than normal. Which, for example, not buying King's Court at all, whereas last game we desperately wanted JMC to be getting more King's Courts. And I think that's an interesting, just, reading the kingdom and figuring out what the optimal strategy is and where your deck's going to take you.
Yeah, I agree with that for the most part. Like, last kingdom was one where I expected them to play more money than they did, and I was kind of happy to see that they sort of correctly identified that they should be going towards Ford and then King's Court. They faltered a little bit towards the end. They got distracted by the golds and chose a suboptimal payload for their engine. But broadly speaking, they played kind of the right idea. Whereas you were correct that most of the time I feel like you're watching the lower level league matches and it's like, oh, look, a strong engine, look at them ignore it. We haven't seen that here so far.
But without trashing, they're just aligning, King's Court on King's Court is just almost never going to happen on this kingdom without a very, very lucky draw.
Yep.
And I guess you can load up on actions, try to get that lucky draw once, and potentially use Cellar or something to seed extra actions for the next turn. But it seems like you're going to get 1 or 2 super nice hands with a King's Court Council Room Although that obviously helps your opponent almost as much.
Yeah. Yeah, you king's courting your council room makes your opponent much more likely to set up if that's what y'all are doing. Oh, look at this double king's court hand, but no council room in sight.
But this in my head when I'm saying, I'm not actually thinking this, but I haven't had enough hands in my life where I've drawn king's court, and 3 treasures. And looking at this board, it feels like one of those boards where I would do that and not be happy about it. So I'm, we often, when we're saying king's court, we would skip king's court entirely here. It's because we're thinking of how are we going to collide it with the actions that we want to play 3 times, like council room and mountebank. Maybe warehouse.
JMC, as DZ has pointed out, doesn't actually have a mountebank. And I'm pretty sure it skipped mountebank last game as well, too, right?
They did skip mountebank last turn. That's correct.
I think they're underestimating the strength of this card. It's really good. It's like perhaps the strongest attack in the game. If not, it's very high up there.
Yeah, they didn't. I think they didn't suffer as much. Tyler ended up trashing it fairly early for benefit with the forge, and like they didn't have 2 mountebanks king's courted on them and played, and all of a sudden they trigger a shuffle and their shuffle's got 6 curses and 6 coppers in it, and they're thinking, what am I doing here? If you don't, once you've suffered underneath that enough times, then you'd be like, oh, I have to get one of those so my opponent doesn't have sole access to it.
Yeah, in fact, I think that was probably one of the bigger mistakes of the game for JMC last game was not getting mountebank as their payload once their deck came together. Now, most of the time with mountebank, your deck ends up looking kind of like what they look like here, which is your deck never really comes together in the first place because your incentive is to get mountebank as fast as possible, and then both y'all's decks fall apart.
Yeah, and they're both pushing 30-card decks here. So the get some hordes and then start buying gardens plan feels pretty good.
Yep. Yeah. I've had mountebank on my ban list forever. So I get to happily avoid games like this.
I've had some fun. I had a fun Lost Arts mountebank in my last league season, where my opponent put Lost Arts in something else, and I put Lost Arts in mountebank and just played.
It sounds painful.
2 to 3 mountebanks a turn, and kind of moved my way through the shuffle. And my opponent had this kind of engine built, and then eventually just couldn't function because they had 25 coppers or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that I don't really enjoy the very sluggish games where you've got just like decks full of junk and you're kind of rolling dice to see who can hit price points. And so I try to minimize those. Mountebank, I think, is perhaps the best card at encouraging the decks to fall apart. And so it's never leaving my ban list.
I'm okay with mountebank compared to something like Cardinal. You have a sombrero or something with, and then Cardinal. They play Cardinal on turn 4, and then all of a sudden your action that you didn't see the first shuffle is now exiled, and your opponent feels like they're ahead by 4 turns on turn 5, basically. Whereas mountebank, you're kind of giving out coppers and curses equally.
I don't know. 5/2 mountebank can be pretty scary.
Indeed.
I don't particularly like Cardinal. In fact, it's the only card I dislike from Menagerie, I think. But it has the advantage that it kind of sucks. Cardinal's weak and so often not centralizing. And so it's a risky proposition to get it in the first place. Whereas mountebank, if it's around, you're almost always incentivized to get it.
Yeah, I think.
I really think that we're buying golds one at a time in a kingdom, in a deck even that's already got bandits
and king's courts.
Yeah. I guess I could have, like, there was a lot to that sentence. I probably could have just stopped it at, I really just like they were buying golds. It tends to go without saying.
There's bandit and horde, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to gain golds here. There's no need to buy them one by one. Gardens, maybe? Gardens type? That's a lot of bandits.
Once you get to, I don't know, 30 cards in your deck, you start to think that maybe the Gardens are going to be really strong. And JMC is at 38, 36 cards right now.
I could see just buying one more card of value there because JMC was, and then Heyitstowler was on their following turn, both about to trigger a shuffle. And so you might want to throw in a good card right before you shuffle your deck because it's going right back into that shuffle. Now that we both triggered shuffles, I think, from here on out is definitely we're into like greening territory. Gardens look like they're going to be really good.
This is going to be, though, a phenomenal turn for Towler.
Oh, goodness.
They can King's Court the Mountebank here. Well, probably they should have played the Warehouse first, but to discard the estates and draw those treasures, but
yeah, so here's the one or two turns of the game we were talking about.
Yeah, can they buy 7 Gardens here? Is that crazy?
That's a good question. So you need 28 money. They've got that
30. It looks like.
Yeah, you could reasonably buy that.
I wouldn't 36.
So now that you're here, I would be buying like 2 King's Courts in a council room because you have Royal Seals and can top deck those. So you could guarantee your next turn is going to go off as well.
Yeah, 2 King's Courts, council room. I mean, they've got 36. They could buy 3 King's Courts and 2 council rooms if they wanted. Top deck it all and try to pile out next turn.
2 King's Courts in a council room, I think, is enough to make sure your turn goes off. You could take all of them though, and that's also.
I wonder reasonable. If Towler also doesn't know about that you can play King's Court on King's Court.
Yeah, like I like the idea of seeding a starting hand. Like they're like in the right ballpark. They're taking advantage of that. That being said, King's Court werewolves. King's Court Warehouse into council room is much weaker than King's Court council room as far as like quality of it kicking off your turn.
Yeah.
So if you play King's Court on a King's Court and then a council room, you get to draw 12 cards and then search the next 12 cards plus the other 2 in your hand or any other action card. You can play that. So like you find another council room, you search another 12 cards. You've now got like 26 cards in your hand.
Then you're going to find your King's Court.
25 cards, I think. In
any case, you play that King's Court. King's Court, the Bandit for the 3 golds. King's Court, the Mountebank for the curses and the 6 money. Draw the whole deck.
Yeah. And if you need the actions, at some point in that chain, you just King's Court a cellar or a warehouse eventually if it's in your top 25 cards.
But they should have enough King's Courts to do it all with King's Courts.
Yeah. Right.
And then see if they King's Court the warehouse here.
Kind of what we're seeing here, I think, is a result of JMC not getting enough attacks. Like, if my opponent weren't playing Mountebank here, I think it might be worth throwing in a bunch of King's Courts and council rooms for the sake of getting off this big mega turn. I feel like if the opponent is more aggressively putting junk in my deck, those turns can be much less frequent in terms of being lined up.
Yeah. So if Towler played King's Court, Bandit, Mountebank, council room, I suspect they would have a pile out here.
Let's see. What are we piling out? Curses, King's Courts, and
warehouses.
Do you have buys for that? So you'd have 10
buys.
And you need to buy.
And Mountebank would give out 3 curses.
A King's Court, 2 curses. Yeah, that seems right.
They can also buy they might get to 6 provinces with that line. It's 15 money plus however many treasures they have, which is 26 in hand right now.
Yeah, no, as Full of Aura points out, they would only get 2 curses because they could discard the one from their hand, but that's still enough gains.
Yeah, with 29 money in hand, you add 9 for golds, it's 38, and 6 from the mountebanks, that's 40, 44. You could certainly just buy 5 provinces, though, and the game's, over at that point. I think it's probably over anyways. This is a big enough turn.
Now, one thing that's confusing me is why do they have so many royal seals?
Good question. I'm not sure.
Because after the first royal seal, the rest of them are just silvers. There's no value in top decking the same card, 3 times instead of 1.
Yeah, certainly if you are able to get the one big turn and draw deck, the royal seal is very powerful because you can top deck the engine pieces to keep building and make sure you have a big turn. And we see these decks are so big, JMC has a 11 card starting hand and was unable to find, unfortunately, a King's Court.
Yep.
And I guess you lead on Vassal and hope.
Yeah, so you could theoretically, you Vassal hit a King's Court, then King's Court of Vassal, which finds more King's Courts. Yeah, resigning is totally reasonable if you think it's over. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, when we look at the final deck state, we see JMC has 5 curses and 12 coppers, so Towler's 7 coppers. So the mountebank did make a difference there.
Yeah, big difference.
All right, I will see you in game 3.